Hey everyone, welcome to Modernizing MSP Operations with Agentic AI. I'm Robert O'Brien, and whether you're running service delivery, building workflows, or just trying to stay ahead of the curve, this session is for you. Today, we're going to be breaking down what Agentic AI actually is, how MSPs are using it right now, and what to expect next. If you're joining live, use the Q&A box. We are here live to answer any questions you might have. And joining me today is co-founder and CRO of Rezolve.ai, Manish Sharma, and our Director of MSP Operations, Matt Ruck. Let's start with something foundational. Agentic AI is becoming a pretty hot term, but most people I talk to aren't exactly clear on what separates it from automation or copilots. Manish, how do you define Agentic AI in practical terms? What's it doing differently that people should really understand?
Rob, thank you for having us today. Agentic AI is the third generation of AI, is how I look at it. The first generation of AI was, your classical AI, where you were putting question and answers, and the bot was giving answers on the basis of what you have put, right? The second generation was generative AI, which was great in generating responses to questions that you were asking, but it was still not very high in reasoning and other capabilities. And then the third level of AI is the agentic AI, which has amazing reasoning capability. It has amazing action capabilities. It's very autonomous in nature. I'll give you a simple example. I was asking our Rezolve.ai bot one day some question, and it wouldn't give me the answer. It will instead offer to create a ticket. I was a little bit confused about it, why it is doing that. So I looked in the behind. We have something called explainability, and you can look up why the bot is doing something that it is doing. And what I found was the bot was saying the reasoning of the bot to not provide an answer from a knowledge document that it had was that the knowledge document was very complex. It was something that only a technician can, use to solve a problem. It is not something someone like me, who's an end user, can use to solve the problem. So this reasoning capability, this autonomous, almost human-like capability to, be able to decide, right, is very unique. This was not there in AI for a while, and now it is there. And that's why agentic AI is very different from everything else that we have seen so far.
I see. Well, all right, Matt. Well, let's move from concept to deployment. What have MSPs actually implemented so far with AI solutions? Like what's real today, not theoretical?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Overall, I would tell you that the MSP market hasn't done an awful lot with AI. They've spent the past 2 or 3 years, playing around with it, maybe perhaps trying to implement some low-level basic bots internally. There's been a lot in terms of Copilot 365 and consulting around there in that space. But Copilot 365 is typically too expensive to be deployed organizationally, right? Mm-hmm. So we see about 10% of the endpoints in a particular customer environment enabled with Copilot 365. We see some of the largest MSPs attempting to build their own chatbot solutions from scratch. I think that sometimes your eyes may be a little bit bigger than your stomachs on a project like that. Sure. And we see some of those projects actually coming back to us in some boomerang accounts. In other words, it's very difficult to get those things implemented. But overall, that's what we're seeing. What I tell MSP owners is that you're not behind yet. But in the next 18 to 24 months, you'll definitely be able to discern the MSPs that made investments versus the ones that didn't get started. And I think it's going to have an impact to their operations.
So Manish, when automation starts scaling, people often ask, what happens to the team? So how is the role of IT operator changing in this AI augmented environment? Are we talking like reskilling, offloading, or something else?
Well, for sure, excuse me, the role of the operators, the technicians, is changing, because what is going to happen is technicians will not have to do everything. Some of the things that technicians do today is really not very smart. They're doing repetitive stuff, but they're also not working on the right things. Just because there's huge amount of tickets that come in, you're really not sure. You pick up the ticket based on the sequence and whatnot, but there might be a very important ticket sitting somewhere, created by a CEO of a company, for example, on a very important thing, and that ticket is waiting because there was nobody to tell you that this is the ticket that you should be working on instead of some other ticket, right? So everyone is going to work more smartly. People will know which tickets to work on. AI will already resolve some tickets. The tickets that AI will not resolve, AI is going to help you figure out which tickets to work on, how to solve the ticket, where is the knowledge related to that ticket. So the best way I can describe this is power tools, right? Over the weekend I was working in the garden, and if you have power tools, man, your life becomes so much easier, right? You have this electric this and electric that, and you're getting things done in a jiffy. So if you don't have power tools, though, you can be sweating all over the place and not getting much done. I think that's how the role of technicians and supervisors is going to change.
Sure. So Matt, let's hit on value. Where are the MSPs seeing the biggest ROI? Is it going to be in internal productivity gains or in external client-facing solutions like automated deflection?
It's a really good question. So I tend to bucket the ROI into 4 categories. I'll just go over them very quickly. We have got helping your engineers just be more efficient. So to Manish's power tools analogy, this is training, chatbots on data that's important to engineers and solving problems. So what does that mean? It could be historical ticket data in ConnectWise. It could be processes in SharePoint. It could be vendor stack websites where we're scraping information. But at the end of the day, we're enabling the engineers to get more work done than they were able to previously. And it's, the number one cost of revenue for an MSP is engineer labor. And so it doesn't take an awful lot to have an incredibly meaningful ROI in that area. If you get 15% engineer efficiency and you extrapolate that across all of your engineers, that's a big win. Sure. The second category is, what we call ticket deflection. Ticket deflection, this is the end users that the MSP supports, and having a chatbot that's integrated with ConnectWise Manage or ServiceNow, and essentially empowering the end users to self-resolve a portion of their own issues. This isn't common in the MSP space right now. It's very common in the enterprise space with substantial results, measurable results. That tickets just go away. And for the MSPs, what they'll come to understand is that essentially that's free labor, right? So the end users are self-resolving their own issues. So the ROI is pretty significant over there. Bucket number 3 and bucket number 4, I'll go over quickly. Bucket number 3 is automations. And, we have a lot of MSPs that are hand building automations, which is incredibly labor intensive, and then they have to be maintained. And, anytime something changes, the automation has to get updated, that kind of thing. In the future, agentic automations will, self-learn and self-heal. More on that later. And then bucket number 4 is generating revenue. Okay. And so most MSPs have not generated revenue in any meaningful way on AI solutions, and we hope to change that as well. So those tend to be the 4 buckets.
So Manish, I've got to ask this because it comes up a lot behind closed doors. Do MSPs still face a tech gap compared to the enterprise world, or is access to this level of tech finally starting to level out?
Yeah, so MSP market is a unique market, right? It's a little bit different from the enterprise market. Enterprise market is huge. MSP market is smaller than enterprise market, though significantly large, but it's still smaller than the enterprise market. And what tends to happen is that you have a specialized vendor that work in this space. Typically, they are not in enterprise market. There are not too many success stories of people who are great in enterprise market and also great here, right? So therefore, typically an MSP market technology might be 18 months or so behind the enterprise market technology, and people can get away with providing a little bit lower technology in the enterprise MSP market as opposed to the enterprise market. But with product like us, Rezolve.ai, which is operating both in enterprise market and MSP market, we are absolutely bringing the latest technology here. If we are working with Agentic AI in enterprise market, MSP market is also getting Agentic AI. But that's a very interesting perspective. And actually, one of the reasons we decided to go into MSP market was this. We wanted to bring the best and the latest and the greatest here in this market, same as enterprise market.
Sure. So, all right, Matt, on the topic of access and stack complexity, How would you approach Gen AI middleware as a strategy to help MSPs integrate, across multiple client systems and tools?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So, I tend to bucket AI solutions into three categories. The first is AI improvements inside an individual application. So every single application software vendor that's out there, every SaaS vendor, not just in the MSP space, but in general, they're implementing AI functions into their app. So that's one solution, and it has some advantages in that it can immediately be deployed. You can get immediate value out of it. But there's only so far you can take that solution because the software vendors look at the world in terms of what their application does and not how it can extend into other parts of the MSP's tech stack. So number two is you can build your own chatbot from scratch. And if it's just a single purpose chatbot, maybe that is a viable solution. If it's more of an enterprise solution, doing some of the things that we've talked about today, essentially you're building your own application from scratch. Very difficult to do. The third solution is to essentially use a platform that's both a product that you can get up and running within a couple of months and get some value out of it, but in the future extend use cases and integrate into various data sources. And that's essentially the Rezolve.ai platform, right? So integrated with ConnectWise Manage out of the box, IT Glue, that kind of thing, but it's future-proofed. We can extend use cases for MSP and their clients into different areas. So, the Gen AI middleware solution, I think, puts you in a position where you're getting product value right out the chute, but you also haven't cornered yourself into a box, and you could extend use cases into the future and have a future-proofed kind of solution.
If I may just add here, the MCP protocol that has come in recently will help us remain in this position of being AI for all, for different platforms and even different AIs, right? So there are a lot of companies which are coming up with their own AI, and they might or might not do certain things better than others, right? So if they do indeed, a certain company, let's say Workday does something really well, they haven't, I don't know of them doing something really well so far, but in the AI space, but if they do, right, if they end up doing something really well, then we can connect to them and via the MCP protocol and be the middleware for them. So the MCP protocol will allow us different disparate systems also to work with each other. And our positioning as a middleware, AI middleware, I think it makes a lot of sense even going forward.
Sure. So let's talk about the big leap. When do you expect, Matt, Agentic AI to fully take over tasks that still require manual or scripted automation today? Are we already there in some cases?
We're not, but we're close. Okay. So, we have been one of the very few companies to actually commercialize Agentic AI. And we have a couple of case studies in the Fortune 1000 space and soon in the MSP space. But so for MSPs, these automations, believe it or not, in some ways are more complex than the enterprise community. Well, why is that the case? Well, let's say an MSP is supporting 200 clients. There's 200 different networks with 200 different configurations. And it's the reason why these hand-built automations, and practically every MSP has endeavored to build their own. It's the most laborious, frustrating project ever. I speak with MSP CEOs, and I'd like to tell people half-jokingly that our number one competitor at Rezolve.ai isn't a company. It's MSPs completing their automation projects because they never do, right? But I digress a little bit. You were asking when will it be commercially available? And I think the answer is in the next 12 to 18 months. And so in that world, and this is where it really gets exciting, let's take a very common MSP automation, deploying a new user. So you have a customer and they have a new employee, in the future, agentic automations, instead of the automation going in sequence and saying, create the Active Directory account, then do this, then create their HubSpot account, then do this, it will look completely differently because essentially we'll train an agentic chatbot to say, attach yourself to the Acme Paper company network, figure out what applications they run in the context of maybe historical things that you've done for them in the past, and it will actually go, okay, I get it. They have gone away from HubSpot, and now they're a Salesforce shop, and now I have to create that in Salesforce, and it's basically going to be self-healing. So these agentic automations are going to take care of the heavy lifting when it comes to not only creating the automation, but maintaining it going forward.
Well, speaking of agentic AI and automations, Manish, I have a question for you. I've recently heard of OpenAI Operator. Would you like to explain that, and what changes can we expect to see?
Yeah, so I'll pick up exactly where Matt left, which is agentic automations are going to be smart. They're going to be able to think step by step. It's not a workflow. Now, one thing, to draw the comparison, if you remember the old RPAs, how they used to operate, the old RPAs used to absolutely, they were very dumb. They will go, the script will look like this, go 7 steps down and 3 steps right, and then there should be a button and press this. And if that button is pressed, then a new screen will open where hopefully if you go 20 steps down and 3 steps right, there'll be a box, and in the box, paste something or something like that. So these were very, script-driven automations. Even BPM automations were script-driven. What Matt is talking about is automation where each step the AI has ability to think. Now, how will AI think if it needs a visual clue on what is happening? That's where OpenAI Operator comes in. OpenAI Operators is kind of looking at on your screen and seeing what is happening on the screen. So it does not have to act like a script. It can see an error code popping up, and it can say, generally right now it's working with the browser, but eventually I'm sure this is going to work for the entire desktop. And essentially what will happen is it can see what it is doing and what is the effect of, what is happening, the effect of this, right? So this kind of, intelligence with the ability to vision kind of capability is where OpenAI Operator is taking. And that's exactly where Rezolve.ai is going. Our automation in future is going to be much more autonomous. Of course, there'll be certain guardrails present, right? Like in terms of autonomous automation does not mean it can do whatever it wants. So there'll be guardrails present. But this automation space is changing quite a lot. And one should keep their eyes peeled on what is going to happen to automation in the next few months.
So how about a tactical recommendation, Matt? If an MSP is just getting started with agentic AI or agentic automation, what's the one workflow they should automate this quarter for the biggest impact?
I don't know that I would try to isolate a particular workflow. I would just say that if we go back to your question around ROI, okay, that's what this is all about. It's all about MSPs enabling their engineers to become more efficient. And so I would start there. I would lean in there. Okay. And there's so much that we can do. And the product roadmap is so exciting. But essentially, we look at the world through the eyes of the engineer, enabling them to get more work done. And so, that's where I would say, think about empowering your MSP with tools that make engineers make their lives better. Training chatbots on data across your tech stack, enabling them to resolve problems more quickly, helping level 1 engineers with next suggested steps, AI generated actions, sentiment review of tickets, right, where we're going through and identifying the tickets that are in trouble. These technologies exist today. This is not theoretical. We can implement that for an MSP today and really empower operations and improve CSAT and that kind of thing. So I would lean in there, Rob.
I see. And I'm going to ask a question that I have of my own. What's the one thing you think the industry is getting wrong about AI and MSPs right now?
That the industry's getting wrong about AI. Well, I would just say that there's been some false starts. There have been some vendors that were early and I think that there's a little bit of hesitancy to, make some of these investments, but I would tell you that it's critical to get started now. We're predicting sort of the way that we view the world is that right now it's some of the largest MSPs are our clients right now, Rob. And they're making these investments because they realize that they're going to have a financial advantage over competitors that do not make these investments. So if you believe that we can make engineers, let's say 20% more efficient, and you have an MSP that's made those investments, and 2 years from now, they're able to have price points that are competitively advantageous over those that do not. So that's where we see, that's what the industry doesn't quite understand yet, is that we are heading towards a top line revenue decline 2 or 3 years from now. And you have to get started now to be well positioned to thrive in that environment. And so that would be my message to MSP CEOs and COOs, is that you need to get started now, because 3 years from now, it's going to be too late.
And I just want to add here, we had our few versions of our MSP product, and we are about to launch a new version of our MSP product. We are already showing it to MSPs in one-to-one meetings. We will not be sharing it here, but we are showing it to MSPs in one-to-one meeting of what our new product looks like. It is so powerful that, despite the industry experience so far, where they might be either, at least they're not overwhelmed with the technology that has come in, right? They're either underwhelmed or at par of what they thought. I think with our next release, they're going to get overwhelmed with what the technology is able to do for them. And this will be a bigger step among many steps that are going to happen. Like we talked about the automation being smarter, that are going to change how the entire thing looks. One thing I forgot to talk about when we're talking about automation, there are new systems available, the new technologies which are making APIs so easy, right? Generative AI is making even creating APIs and integrating very easy, because generative AI can read a Postman collection and create an API. So this is a space to watch. This is a space to invest in and to participate in. I don't think you should be a bystander, like Matt said, at this point of time. If you're interested in knowing more, come to us, book a one-to-one meeting, and Matt or I will show you what our product looks like, the next generation and the existing one. But the next generation product is, if you want to get into that action, you want to move right now.
So we have about 6 minutes left. Let's say an MSP wants to pitch AI internally, but doesn't have a buy-in yet. What's one KPI or outcome they should lead with to win that support?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the interesting things is that depending on the role of the manager / executive at the MSP, their view of the world is very, very different. That's what I've come to learn. So maybe I'll just give you my thoughts there, because there are sometimes conflicting priorities. And so you look at the CEO or the board of directors, especially true with larger MSPs, they're looking this at a strategic level. And Manish and I help prepare many a board deck, okay, where the board needs to understand what investments they're going to make. And we have KPIs and metrics that we're reporting when we're partnering with the MSP. So the CEO and the board doesn't look at it in terms of what can the tool do. They look at it in terms of what outcome is it going to provide.
Okay.
You look at the CTO, and the CTO tends to believe that automations is the key. And sometimes that's in conflict with what the CEO is thinking, right? And so they're putting all of their eggs into the automation basket. When you look at the service desk manager, and that tends to be sort of the third leg of the stool, they're very much looking at it from a CSAT point of view. And so, customer satisfaction, how can they create memorable experiences for their clients? What can we do? And how can AI enable that? As well as how can it help first line engineers, level 2 engineers? So I hope that helps, because it's really interesting. You've got 3 audiences typically at the MSP with 3 sometimes competing priorities and objectives, right?
Yeah.
But all 3 are critically important. And so, what we aim to do is sort of be the glue and the partner That's enabling the MSP to figure out what they're going to do and when, and help sequence that work so that it delivers the best ROI for that MSP, for our MSP partner.
So speaking of ROI, final question here. If you had to describe a healthy Agentic AI implementation 1 year in, what outcomes would you expect to see, and what should MSP leaders be aiming for?
So, I would say that the trick to any of these solutions is adoption.
Okay.
The engineers have to use it. The end users that the MSP is supporting have to use it. And so we think adoption will increase over time. If the bot does a good job and it's solving issues, the usage is going to increase over time. So, we're going to be shooting for measurable KPIs around engineer efficiency, engineers getting more work done, using the solutions, end user ticket deflection. So at the end of year one, let's say that we have 15% ticket deflection of just the level 1 tickets for the end user community. Okay. We know based on enterprise accounts that we can get up to 40%, but it takes time to get there, right? So I would say, if we can make engineers 10 to 15% more efficient and get everybody on board using the product, and we can get the end user community maybe self-resolving 15 to 20% at the year one mark, those are big numbers, and they'll only get better over time.
Yeah, and Matt, you have done the math behind these numbers, right? Like, even if you achieve this much in year one, some people here might be thinking, hey, 15% is too low, eh? But if you go and implement this and you get 15%, the numbers are huge. The business case is huge over there, right? And we can again share the math with people who are interested in that. Sit down with them and show them how it works. But yeah, this is exactly the right kind of target.
The ROI is measurable and significant, and orders of magnitudes of 10 to 20x what you're putting into it. So by year 3 having a 2,000% ROI, and I didn't stutter.
I thought you did. Wow.
It is really the measuring stick, right? And so, again, that may sound like pie in the sky. But again, imagine you're a 100-person MSP and you're doing 25 million a year in services revenue. And your cost of revenue is, so I'm talking of the engineers and their managers, let's say it's half that figure. And then let's say the cost of revenue is 12 million salary. Okay, let's apply a very small number to that, 10% efficiency gains. Now those are soft cost savings. The only way they're hard costs is if you let go of staff, and that's not going to happen. We're just going to make staff more efficient. But 10% of 12 million is a pretty healthy number. And so you can see that small incremental changes that'll get better over time are going to have a meaningful effect on cost of revenue.
Yep. Thanks for that. Well, just a quick recap before we close. First, Agentic AI isn't just a buzzword. It's a shift in how tasks get done. Operators and automation frameworks are maturing faster than ever. MSPs are not playing catch up. They're stepping into leadership. And the human role is changing, but not disappearing. A massive thank you to Matt Ruck and Manish Sharma for sharing their insights today. And thanks to all of you for being a part of this. Remember, we are in the Q&A here to answer any questions you might have. And we will send out the recording and resources shortly. Until next time, thanks for joining and stay curious.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, guys.